Hey, I'm Brooke Halliday, licensed professional clinical counselor and your host of Coloring Outside the Lines. I believe that we are the byproducts of our experiences and the environments in which we were raised, and most of us have earned a few scars from those things over the years. I've been making it my mission to help people learn to accept themselves and have compassion for everything that they've survived. Through deep and vulnerable conversations with some amazing women, you're going to hear about major moments in their life when they chose to color outside the lines and demonstrate firsthand just how capable we all are. So get ready to be inspired as we color outside the lines and make something beautiful. I am part of a consultation group with Amy, and so I was so excited when she said that she would be willing to talk to me about her postpartum experience because Amy is a certified perinatal mental health professional. So Amy not only has the experience of working with clients, but also her own firsthand experiences to share. Amy has been a licensed therapist since 2011 and is passionate about supporting women and their emotional well-being. In addition to her passion for helping women during pregnancy, postpartum, and new motherhood, navigating trauma, Amy also owns her own private practice, Nurture Women's Therapy, in Alexandria, Minnesota. And on top of that, she also co-created the pre-social work transfer pathway program at the Alexandria Technical and Community College and serves as an adjunct professor. Basically, what I'm saying is Amy does it all. So listen in as she talks about her experience with perinatal mood disorders. Because I don't know, honestly, anything about your story. I mean, most of us typically end up working in the areas that
Yeah,
we've firsthand experience with, right? Like, I don't know how to say that nicely, as crazy as crazy does. Like we end up where
right,
where we have experience. And so
right.
yeah, I mean, if you want to just tell us about
All
you.
right. Well, I'm Amy Sword. I'm happy to be here and have this opportunity to talk about my experiences and now how that's helped shape who I am. So, yes, you asked how I met my husband. So, actually met him in college. So, I went to Bethel University, and I was a freshman. He was a junior, and it was kind of funny. We had like mutual friends, and we went sledding in a January like post snowstorm experience. And it's funny because he was wearing like this, like, oh, I don't remember what they're called. It's like the big furry hats with like the side flaps.
Oh, the bombers.
The bomber hats, yeah.
Yes.
And I thought the hat was very not cute. So I saw him, but I didn't really think anything else of him. And so I was like, "Oh, that hat's dumb." And anyway, though, but then the next day we had this thing called Stalker Net, which is where you could like see the pictures and the dorms of like everyone on campus. That
STALKER net.
we called it that, yes, because we could like look it up, or we actually had a book too, where you could at that time actually was probably more accessible with the book, which was like all the students. And so I looked through all the juniors named Justin and I found it and I was like, oh, he's kind of cute. Take that hat off and we're working with something. and and so it was, so we started talking after that, and that's how I met him. And so we got married actually right after I graduated. So I was a youngster when I got married when I was 22. And so yeah, we are,
Holy
man,
moly, I didn't know that.
yeah. So we've been married for 16 years already, which makes me feel super old. But yeah, I pretty much like got my diploma, went down the aisle, got my diploma, and then turned left and then walked down the aisle. And that's that's how it happened for me.
Wait, so you were like applying for grad school and planning a wedding at the same time?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I know.
okay, no
Yeah,
big deal.
pretty much. Yeah, no
Holy
big deal.
crap.
I actually graduated in December, and then we got married in February. And then that summer is when we moved to Grand Forks because we went to the University of North Dakota for our grad programs. He was in biology, and then I was in social work.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize you got married so young.
I know, right? It was kind of like the whole bring by spring thing. You know, when you go to a private Christian on 4-year school, like there's a lot of kids that like boom, get that ring by spring, or they
I have never heard that before.
you haven't heard about the senior scramble. the, the seniors who haven't found someone yet, so they're scrambling. Oh yeah, yeah. Yep. Yep, put me right into the stereotype. That's where I was.
Did you choose Bethel because of it being a Christian college, or was it just like a good fit for you? Did you get
Yeah.
scholarships? How did you end up at Bethel?
I did actually. So, my faith and being a Christian is very important to me. So that was very appealing. My brother had gone to Bethel too. So my brother's 3 years older than me. He played football at Bethel for a number of years. And so I was just very, very familiar with the campus and that sort of thing. And then I went to Bethel and I played volleyball for 4 years there too. So it was,
Oh my gosh, Amy, I didn't know that either.
yeah, yeah, it was amazing. It was so fun. And actually, I roomed with my volleyball roommates and I still see them a couple times a year. And there's some just like lifelong ride or die friends. So it was awesome. Like I loved college. It was so cool.
Okay, well, this is like a totally side tangent. Now I need to know, what position did
Mhm.
you play in volleyball?
I was an outside hitter.
No,
So,
you're not even tall. What?
well, I played D3, so that's why. It's
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Okay.
Let's be fair. I played D3 volleyball.
Still.
But yeah, no, it was so fun. Like I loved it.
So when you were in undergrad, did you always know you were going to get your master's and go to school for social work counseling, or were you kind of on the fence? I know you're a planner, and so I'm just curious, did you
Right,
always have the
right.
plan?
I actually was initially I was pre-med and I was thinking about psychiatry. So I was pre-med with a psychology undergrad or major, excuse me. And so I was pre-med all the way through my sophomore year. I mean, I did OChem. Like I went like really into this. And so, but then I realized that the medication management part that comes with psychiatry wasn't as where my passion was in the same way, not so much with psychiatry as like symptom management, short sessions, kind of tweak the meds and, the next person comes in. And I really want to have that therapeutic space of like, we have an hour where we talk through how you're feeling, all the things, and go from there. And so then that left me realize like, okay, so I want to be a therapist. So what are my options to get there? And realizing that, you could get your master's in social work, which is the route I went to get my MSW and then become a licensed independent clinical social worker. You could be a licensed professional clinical counselor, could get your PhD or PsyD in psychology. And so learning that there's these different routes. And for me, the social work route seemed like a really good fit. I liked the idea that it wasn't very research heavy. Like in a PhD program, I didn't really want to spend time doing my own research. I like that I could, get my 4 year undergraduate and then master's in 2 years and then be able to get out there. I really liked the marketability of an MSW degree. If I, for some reason, didn't want to be a therapist anymore, that the MSW and LICSW could transfer to a lot of different types of work. Yeah, it was probably, I didn't switch my major to social work during school. I finished with psychology, but then went on to get my master's in social work.
So you and Justin went to grad school together. Had you guys talked about like what you wanted families to look like? Like you're still pretty young at this point. I mean, he's still relatively young as well, but older than you. And so
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
did you guys know that you wanted kids? Did you have plans for family? When you wanted a family? How many kids? All of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, vaguely. Like we knew that we wanted to. I got married young, but I wasn't jumping on having kids super young, I will say. So that
Smart,
was not part of
smart.
the plan. I mean, I didn't have my first until I was 29. So we were married for 7 years before we had my oldest. And so we knew that was on the radar, but we also had stuff that we want to do, want to get our careers going, feel more settled, did a lot of traveling, things like that. So yeah, we've been pretty in sync with what we wanted as far as that's been concerned, which has been nice.
Hmm. Okay, so how many kids do you have total?
So I have three.
How far apart in ages are your children? And what was your postpartum experience like with all of them?
So I have three kids. So my oldest daughter is 9, then my son is 7, and my younger daughter is 4.5. I thankfully have had as far as pregnancies have are concerned, I've had pretty smooth pregnancies, and smooth deliveries, which has been very nice. Stella, my oldest, my postpartum experience went, as well as it can be for like a first go around. I mean, I certainly
Right.
had, stressors and anxieties and stuff like that, but as far as I can recall, nothing like clinically diagnostic as far as the postpartum anxiety. So went well. I had great support, which was very, very helpful. And then I had Luke, my son, so my second. And again, similarly, pregnancy went smoothly. His birth went super smoothly. My maternity leave, I enjoyed it, was able to, kick back and had the benefit of knowing a little bit more. So that helped, not feeling like I completely didn't know what I was doing like the first go around.
How was it
Um,
going from 2 kids to 1 sorry, 1 kid to 2? Said that in reverse order.
you know what? Fine. I think Justin and I did man to man defense like really well. So like, so that went smoothly. It was okay. Like it transitioned fairly well. And for me, what happened though is like, well, things went smoothly. Then around 4 months postpartum, I had anxiety hit me like a Mack truck, like boom, like just
Oh,
came. Yep, and really intense, which is I didn't know at the time, but 3 months postpartum is actually peak onset for postpartum anxiety or depression, those things,
why is
and
that?
so we don't it's not that there's a specific correlation or a specific cause that we can identify with right now. There's some theories, at least in my case, I think that going back to work was associated with that. But really, when we think about perinatal mental health in general, and we think about, so the phrase that we use that encompasses postpartum depression anxiety is actually PMAD, PMAD, so perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. And so perinatal, we're talking about the moment you get pregnant to a full year postpartum. Okay. So it's not just this like, hey, if you're good at the first 6 weeks, then you're out of the woods type of thing. We actually know that this is much longer period of time that women are more vulnerable. And I should say too, we even like earlier data, if someone is having difficulties conceiving, then we expand that perinatal period to include that period of time too. So really, this perinatal period for women is like at minimum 17 to 18 months. And actually, the recent trainings I've been to have talked about trying to expand that definition up to like 3 years postpartum potentially, or one training went to even said 5 years. So we're really knowing that this is a long period of time. And when you
Yeah,
think
I've
about
heard a lot of women talk about, like, feeling like their brains don't return to, like, normal functioning until at least 3 years out.
right, exactly. And when you think about this, and this was the case for me, when you have kids 2 years apart, I wasn't out of that perinatal period for like years. You don't get out of it before you're in it again. And so
Mhm.
we just know this is longer period of time that women are more vulnerable to. So when I go back to that acronym PMAD, PMAD, so it stands for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. So the perinatal period, the mood being like depression, bipolar, things like that in that category, anxiety, and that's different types of anxiety. It can be generalized, it can be panic, it can be um, PTSD, it can be OCD, which is what I'll talk a little bit about in a bit, but it's like a much broader range. And then disorder, just meaning it's getting in the way of your life. Okay.
Mhm.
Disorder is one of those words that feels very stigmatized, like, oh, there's something wrong with me. However, when we really break it down, it's like, is it interfering with you living the life you want to live? So I want to be able to enjoy being with my baby and taking her to the park, but I'm so anxious, I'm not going. Well, that's interfering then. So that is an interference in how I want to be able to be as a parent. So when we think about this perinatal period being so much longer, for again, peak onset being around 3 months postpartum, there's an exact reason, but that's what the data is showing. And I think it's very helpful to recognize that because I think it's very easy to be like, oh, I went to my 6 week check, things are good, I'm in the clear. When in reality, so many women who experience this, it's going to come on after they're already like done receiving those appointments with their OB.
Right.
Right. So, okay. So all of a sudden it's 3 months. Well, actually 4 months really is kind of what it was. So I'm back at work. Anxiety just like hits me. My anxiety is very high. I'm worrying. I'm not sleeping. Like I'm a
Did you
sleeper.
get did you get any period of time back at work where you're like, "Oh, this is okay," or was it like as soon as you went back to work, you were like, "Ooh, here's the anxiety?"
It wasn't immediate. I really remember it being about 4 months postpartum. So I've been back at work for about a month. It
Okay.
could have started creeping in a couple weeks prior to that before it was full blown. But I was okay with going back to work. Like I enjoyed my job. It was, it's sad that maternity leave was over and it's still certainly adjustment, but I was not overly anxious about returning to work. And so about a month in is when, like I said, I'm anxious, I'm worrying, I'm not sleeping. I'm a sleeper and I was not falling asleep. I was laying there waiting for him to wake up again. And the biggest, I had this gross feeling in my stomach. Like I'd wake up in the morning, like I just was not feeling good. And for me, my biggest symptom was I started having intrusive, scary thoughts. So this idea of it's this phenomenon of unwanted images of harm coming to your baby, and this can be accidental or purposeful, just like boom, pop into my head. So it's really this experience of being plagued by the what ifs. Like, what if this happened? What if they got hurt? What if I did that to them? And we know that, I know now, I didn't know then, but we know that this is very common. That I've seen different stats, but 70 to 90% of moms are going to experience a form of an intrusive thought. And of those, like 50% will have those intrusive thoughts of me doing something to my baby. And so it happens a lot, but we do not talk about them because it's scary.
Are you comfortable sharing the thoughts that you had?
And I go back and forth. I am as a whole. Sometimes I go back and forth about this is about sharing specifics just because I think in some ways it's very helpful for moms to hear specifics to know like, oh yeah, I've had something like that. Oh, good. I'm not alone with that. And I also know that for some people that can be really triggering for them too. So here's what I'll say. Maybe I'll give you some second tier examples
Okay.
too. But like I had a lot of my thoughts revolved around knives and heights.
Okay.
So like, yep. So like, what if I dropped my baby? Like, what if they took a header over the balcony? What if what if I was holding a knife and I tripped and I stabbed them? Things like that. And the thing about these things, these what ifs are very graphic. Like it's not just like, oh, I'm thinking about that. It's like, boom, I'm seeing what this looked like in
It's
my
like
head.
playing out in your head like a
It's like,
movie.
yep, it is. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying. I remember being at my brother's house. So it was summer at this point, and he has like a balcony with a, patio place to eat and it hangs over their driveway that's concrete. And I remember trying to have a conversation with my grandma who was up visiting, and I could not enjoy and be present in that conversation because I could not stop seeing very graphically what it would look like if my son fell over the balcony and it landed headfirst on the concrete. Like I could see it. I could see it happening and I could see in details what that would look like. And it just wouldn't stop. It just wouldn't stop. And the thing about these thoughts is it's scary because you have them and you're like, why am I thinking this? This is
Right.
I am a monster. Why would a mom think these things? And there's shame and there's embarrassment and there's fears of like, I can't tell anybody. Like, what
Well,
are they
that's what
gonna think
I was
about me?
just gonna say. Did you tell your husband? Did you tell girlfriends? Did you tell anybody? Because that's like
No, I
okay.
didn't tell anyone. I tried to kind of tell my husband, and I didn't understand what was happening at the time. So I tiptoed around it a little bit, but I didn't fully go there because I didn't know what was going on with me and I was afraid of what he was going to think. And my husband is very supportive. And, again, in hindsight, I know that I could have in those aspects, but I was just scared. I didn't know what was going on. Why would a mom think these things? And I didn't have this with my daughter. So I didn't know why this was happening now. And so I suffered for a long time. And I wouldn't even Google this because I was like, one, someone's gonna find my search history and what is that gonna mean?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Or two, I'm gonna find something that is gonna confirm that I'm a monster and I can't face that. So I'd rather just not even know. The reality is that I finally did. I finally picked whatever search term to me seemed safe enough to do this. Um,
I mean, you see all those documentaries that are like they
yeah,
pinned the crime on them from their search history. You don't want to be the one that gets
I
caught
know.
that way.
Exactly, exactly. And I did, and it was life changing when I finally started looking into this and learning that. Like in particular, I stumbled upon the Postpartum Stress Center. So that's a clinic out in the Philadelphia area. So Karen Kleiman is a really a leader in the perinatal mental health field. And so there was information on her website, the clinic website, about scary intrusive thoughts and what they are. And I read those and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a name for this. This is something that people experience. There's even a campaign, and I just checked, they're still running this, that they have on their website called the Speak the Secret campaign, where moms can anonymously type out and write out what their thoughts are, with this idea being kind of twofold. One, to decrease shame by being able to tell someone, and two, for other moms to be able to see that and know, like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. And so when I was able to learn, because and let's back up. Remember, I was a therapist at that time. I was
Mhm.
a therapist in mental health, and I did not know what this was. I did not know what was happening to me. And when I finally looked it up and learned more about it, and I learned, like, this is a thing. These are intrusive, scary thoughts, and this is anxiety. This is a symptom of anxiety. I'm experiencing postpartum anxiety. That was life changing for me to know that, like, I'm not alone.
I guess I maybe should have asked ahead of time. Had you experienced anxiety or depression prior to this experience?
I've had periods of anxiousness in the past where I've had anxiety episodes, not postpartum related, but yes. So, which I would say would be a risk factor. I mean, we know that past experiences of anxiety are a risk factor for this. So that would have been my experience before, several years prior to that. And just in general, like just running more anxious probably as a person, and so, but nothing like this. Like this was definitely a different experience for me. And so, it was incredible really for me to learn about this and know that kind of what these are. These are intrusive, scary thoughts that I was having a symptom of anxiety. I was not delusional. I was firmly rooted in reality, and the idea that there is not a connection between having these thoughts and them being acted on. Okay. Because that's the thing, it's the plague with the what ifs. So, like, what if I were to do something? But in the reality is moms don't. Because when you feel anxious and scared about them, you actually do the opposite. You do the things that you need to keep your baby safe. Okay.
Mhm.
So, like, for example, if I was having, or I don't know if I had this one specifically, but like, say a mom is having an intrusive thought about, like, what if I drop my baby down the stairs? Okay. So then that's scary. I don't like having that thought. So what do I do? Well, I hold my baby extra tight when I'm by the stairs. Or maybe I don't go to by the stairs at all. Or maybe I have to, but I hold them tight and I sit and I scoot down on my butt down the whole way down the stairs. So what is the end result? My baby has stayed safe.
Right.
Okay, I have protected my baby. That thought pushed me into making sure that I'd had the baby safe, because when it comes down to it, like, our brains are wired to keep our baby safe. Like, we need to. Like, we do that. We are looking out for danger. The moms, way back in the day that were like, yeah, baby, go play with that saber-toothed tiger. That didn't that didn't work. Okay. Those babies didn't make it. So the moms that had a level of anxiety, they are the ones that survive. So we need that. And we are designed to keep our baby safe. What happens? So we don't, they're still working on, the scientists and stuff to figure out, like, what exactly is the mechanism behind this, but there are some theories. One theory is this idea of, like, yes, we're designed to keep our baby safe, and so essentially our brain is going into hyperdrive to see all the possibilities of danger, even if that sees ourselves as danger. Okay.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
like, think about a time if you took your baby to his friend's house that was not baby proofed, and you're immediately like, oh my gosh, there is a sharp corner there, there's a plug-in that's not covered, there's a gate, there's a stairs without a gate, and you immediately find all the things that are dangerous, and you go around and you try to, like, baby proof it and put things up higher where they can't reach it and stuff like that. It's kind of like your brain is constantly doing that, even to the point of, like, well, I mean, I could do this too. Like, it overdoes it. So, like, like I said earlier, the end result or baby stays safe just isn't super pleasant for how your brain chooses to make that happen.
Yeah, mom's not super safe because we're driving ourselves a little batty.
Yeah, like I am very uncomfortable and I'm anxious.
Mhm.
And the thing is to keep in mind, again, clinically speaking, and I talk with moms I work with about this all the time, having intrusive thought, and if you have that thought and you feel scared, if you feel disturbed, if you feel upset by that, that is clinically speaking a great sign. That tells us that this is anxiety, that you
Right.
are, yep, you are
It's
firmly
like
rooted.
it's like the parents who are worried about being good parents are already a step
Yeah,
ahead in being a good parent already.
exactly, exactly. So like if you're bothered by these thoughts, that is a very protective factor. That tells us like that this is a symptom of anxiety. It's not it's just a thought that your brain is giving you to help to help make sure your baby stays safe. It is not an underlying desire. It's not something that we have to unpack and see where that's coming from. It's boom, a thought, it's a symptom. And as I said earlier, like this, we know that these are very common. Sometimes for women, it's just like, oh, what if they roll off the changing table? And it's in and out of your brain and it doesn't cause distress and you just kind of move on your day. Sometimes it's more intense, vivid, and distressing. Okay. Mine were very intense and distressing. There is something too when these happen a lot. There's actually a diagnosis for this called postpartum OCD. Okay, so this idea of like this experience of having these intrusive thoughts or obsessions, and then couple those with things that we do to make sure that the bad thing doesn't happen and then to decrease our anxiety. So if I have intrusive thoughts around knives, maybe I do not use a knife when I'm home by myself. Maybe I lock them up. Maybe I don't cook. Maybe I make sure someone's in the room with me. So I'm having the thought, but then I'm doing something to decrease my anxiety about that.
Mhm.
And so there's a full diagnosis that can happen. Now, having an intrusive, scary thought does not automatically mean it's postpartum OCD. You can have them without the full blown diagnosis, but there is something there. And I had never heard of that. I had never heard about that when I was experiencing the symptoms that I was experiencing.
So
And
you find that resource and then where does that take you? So like you're not crazy, you're not alone. Clearly
mhm,
there's other people out there who feel like you
mhm.
do. What do you do with that information?
I still soldiered on by myself quite a bit,
Of
which
course you did.
of course I did. Which, of course I know what I know now. I know I could benefit from support from that. However, so what I did was I was able to really know and understand and to take away that pressure and that fear of myself or that fear of, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible mom, to know that this is a symptom. And so what I started to do, and I teach a variation of this with my clients now these days, even still, of being able to, I would have a thought pop into my head, I would notice it, and then I would label it. I'd say, that's a symptom, that's not me. That's a symptom, that's not me. Because what we know is that we can't just make our brains stop thinking things. Okay. So if I tell you to not think about a zebra, like you're going to have an image of a zebra popped into your head. And the problem is if I say, just don't think about it, then I'm going to still think about it. And two, now I'm frustrated that I'm still thinking about it because I told myself to not think about it. So it doesn't
Mhm.
really work to try to just force yourself to stop. So instead, to be able to accept that they're coming, label them, and then move past it. Okay. So actually, how I teach it these days, and I had like a rudimentary version, I would say probably when I was doing it myself. But I tell people, think about it like an ad on Instagram or social media. So you're going to see ads. They're going to be there no matter what you're doing. You're scrolling, boom, they pop up. But there's a couple different ways I could approach that ad. I could see that ad, I can watch it, click on it, go to the website, buy it in every color, quit my job, go work there, try to work my way up the way. Like I can really dive into that ad. Or I can do what I typically do is say, that's an ad. And then it keeps scrolling. So I noticed it. I didn't ignore it. I labeled it, but I kept scrolling. And we can do that with our thoughts too. So with these intrusive, scary thoughts, to be like, Oh, yep, that's a symptom. That's not me.
Did you figure out to do that on your own, or did you find that through your own research?
I didn't maybe put it in like the Instagram ad analogy yet there,
Yeah.
like that kind of evolved over time. But through some of the reading of being able to notice and identify thoughts, know that what they are symptoms and not me, that kind of helped like just learning about some of the resources I found. So at the time, yes, I would say like, yep, that's a symptom. That's not me. And I might be doing that multiple times an hour when things are really intense. So because it's not like you do it once and then it's gone, but you
Mhm.
remind ourselves and we don't place the stock in it, because what is that's really indicative about how much distress we're going to feel, it's what is our interpretation of that thought. Because if I think, oh my gosh, I'm a monster, I'm a terrible mom and I can't tell anyone because they're going to take my baby away, and like boom, like I'm buying it in every color, that is going to cause a whole bunch more distress than if I'm like, oh, there it is again. That's a symptom. That's not me. And then I distract my brain with something else. And so, it was a long haul when it came to that.
So they started around 4 months. At what point in time did you feel like you started to get a handle on your thoughts?
And I'd have to really think about that. So what I can
I mean, I'm
say
just
is,
thinking about the fact that, like, you had
mm,
a subsequent child after
mm,
your
yeah,
son, and so, like, I have to imagine you got him under control at some point in time, otherwise
right,
you wouldn't have
right,
been
right,
like,
right.
"Let's do this again."
Yeah. I would say like the acute phase of me really feeling anxious and uncomfortable was probably a couple months. But I didn't, it lingered for a while. Like I think there's an acute phase in the intrusive thoughts. And then I think it got better where they were maybe as often, or I knew how to deal with them and stuff like that. But I probably did not feel like myself again until he was closer to a year old. And so it wasn't as intense as it was at that Mack truck experience being hit by one, but I didn't feel great for a long time. You know, and one thing that, I did not choose to go on medication at that time, and in hindsight, I wish I would have, to be perfectly honest. Like, I did go in and see my OB and talk about how I was feeling. Again, I maybe wasn't as I know I wasn't specific about having intrusive thoughts, but I did have a conversation about not feeling great, and she offered, to prescribe me Zoloft, and I was like, "No,
Are
no,
OBs
I'm not doing that."
typically the best people to have those conversations with? Or if somebody is experiencing intrusive thoughts related to their child after giving birth, is it better to go to psychiatry, GP? Like, I know there's a bunch of different avenues you could pursue.
I think OBs are in that period, in that space, that would be my first go-to because you're working so closely with them, and there's hopefully an enhanced understanding about what intrusive thoughts are. I'd say that's a great first route, but psychiatry can be helpful and other providers as well. That's going to be your in though, usually with that, or your general practitioner, just because you already have an established relationship and you could probably get in sooner. And so I had a conversation and she offered me that. And I was under the understanding of like, oh, by the time that actually kicks in, I'll be feeling better anyways. So I don't need to. Which in hindsight, like I said, I didn't feel like myself for, oh man, probably back to myself until he was at least a year. And so in hindsight, I would tell, postpartum Amy to take that. Medication is very helpful. Not only is it helpful with like postpartum depression, anxiety in general, but with intrusive thoughts, it can really help quiet them. SSRIs can be a great, great tool to help decrease the intensity and frequency and just help them kind of fade out. I did have a third. And I also, in our plan for our family, like that was going to be it. We had planned to have 3 kids and we weren't planning to have any more. And I also was like, I do not want to feel that way again. To the
Mhm.
point where at my first OB visit, I went back to the same OB, who's wonderful. And I said, hey, remember how I felt before? When I'm 36 weeks postpartum, can you prescribe me the Zoloft? And I'm just going to start taking it. And that's what I did. And I'm not saying that that is the answer for everybody or like that that's even necessarily standard protocol. But for me, I was like, I wish I would have taken that. I'm just going to get that started so it's up and running full speed by the time I have this baby. That's what I did. And I had a much better postpartum experience. I didn't have postpartum anxiety or depression with my third.
I know that Zoloft is safe in pregnancy. Obviously, you know Zoloft is safe in pregnancy.
Mhm.
What would you say to the women that get concerned about taking any medication while they are pregnant?
Certainly, this is something that comes up a lot. And so, of course, I'm not a medical doctor. So, my disclaimer is always like, you have to talk to your prescriber about this. But from the trainings and things that I've experienced, is that the reality is there are a ton of very safe and effective medications that you can take during pregnancy and postpartum if you're nursing or breastfeeding. Now, because what we have a tendency to do is we overestimate the risk of what the medication is going to do, and then we also underestimate the risk of having untreated depression or anxiety in the
Yes,
pregnancy period.
yes, 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 yes.
Right.
I just wanna, like, risk analysis, people. I just wanna highlight that, yes.
Exactly, because we know we do have documented studies that untreated depression has like risk for things like preterm birth, low birth weight. Like we have data for that. We don't have concrete data that medication does this. And some of the reproductive psychiatrists that I follow, because there are reproductive psychiatrists that's what they specialize in is pregnancy and postpartum. So I kind of keep up with some that I learn from and follow. And again, always talk to your practitioner. But what I have pulled from that is you lots of times the safest option is if a mom's on a medication, the safest option is for them to be on what works for them versus changing things up or taking them off it, like, ooh, like
My OB
that
during my 2nd pregnancy
mhm,
made a comment to me that it's hard to get good data on medication use during pregnancy because nobody wants to test on pregnant moms and fetuses too, and
right,
so it's just like that data isn't out there. We're not actually actively doing a
mhm,
lot of this research because nobody wants to ethically test on this population either, and
exactly.
so, like, keeping this in mind too was, like, something really helpful that she said to me.
Mhm, mhm. Exactly, exactly, and so, again, there like you said, the risk analysis that, like, we think the medication is gonna do all these risky things, which we don't really have the data to back up in some circumstances, and then we don't take into consideration what's this gonna happen if I am chronically depressed or anxious and not in a good place for me, because that's not great for baby either.
Talk about that, would you? Did you have any trouble bonding, connecting with your son? How about either of your daughters? Because obviously we're therapists, we know about attachment, and so anxiety, depression can influence some of those things. So I'm curious your personal experience on those, and then speaking a little bit from your clinical experience too.
When I think about bonding attachment, so I don't remember any difficulties with that for, my daughters, which are the ones I did not have anxiety for to this degree. And I would say that with my son, it was able to still progress. Like I had a certain feeling like I know that I'm not feeling as happy or excited about this as I want to be. And I remember still like there's a particular picture taken of my son. He was probably about 6 months old. Adorable picture, and my in-laws had framed it and put it in their house. Very, very cute. Though I could look at that picture and remember, wow, I remember how terrible I felt when that picture was taken.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, like, it was like I certainly have that experience of not being able to experience the postpartum period as I would have liked, particularly that, like, 4 through, 7, 8, 9-month period type of thing. But I think the important thing for us to remember about bonding, first off, that bonding is a process, it's not an event. Like, we think that, like, bonding is like, "Oh, the moment they're laid on your chest, the birds are gonna sing and the clouds are gonna part, you're gonna feel this jolt of love," which is very hard because 1, that doesn't happen sometimes, and 2, that can be hard when that's the message because some moms don't have that initial skin to skin feeling, and then there's like, "Well, I missed out on that experience, and now I'm not gonna have that with my kid," which we know is just not the case because we know that bonding is a process that unfolds, and it involves actually 3 factors. Yes, there's that warm, fuzzy feeling of bonding, but then there's also being protective of your baby and caring for them and meeting their needs. So if you are caring for them and protecting them, you are doing the tasks of bonding, and that warm, fuzzy feeling will come and will follow. So just putting out there for like, even if it's not a postpartum anxiety or depression experience, but knowing that bonding really is that process that unfolds over time, that you didn't just miss out if you weren't struck by that lightning the moment you saw your baby.
If you could give advice to anybody having intrusive thoughts before baby comes, after baby, or to postpartum Amy now, what would you say?
I am such a proponent for education and knowing that one, you are not alone. Because I remember how it felt to feel very alone, and that man, I'm alone and I've got this thing that I can't even tell people about because what are they going to think of me? Good moms don't think this way. Something's wrong with me. And so if I can get it out there to know that you are not alone, this is a symptom of anxiety, that you are a good mom. The good moms have scary thoughts. There's a book about that. Karen Climate that I mentioned earlier has a very popular book called Good Moms Have Scary Thoughts. I would recommend to everybody to know that, and know that it is so important to be able to talk about them, get help from them. Talk to a therapist about it, talk to someone that you trust. I know that medication is a great option too, that can be very helpful. After I had experienced all of this, like it just really put a fire in me to, do more. So I went on to actually get specific training in perinatal mental health through Postpartum Support International. So I got training, I studied, I took an exam. So then I went on so now I'm a certified perinatal mental health professional. So PMHC is what I have. And I'm so passionate about helping moms therapeutically, educationally, supportively. I do a lot. I'm very passionate about educating because, again, it's one of those things that when we know, it takes the wind out of the sails a little bit here. It doesn't mean that they go away. It doesn't mean that you're automatically do a 180 and feel better. But man, it makes a big difference to know that you're not alone and we have a name for this and that this is not who you are. These are symptoms. This is your brain going into hyperdrive. These are what we call ego dystonic thoughts. So dystonic means like if I see myself as of someone who loves my baby, cares for my baby, protective for my baby, and then I'm having an intrusive thought of like hurting them in some way, that's so not who I am. It's not lining up. And that's why I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling distressed. It's not me. And those thoughts just do not align with who we are. And like I said earlier, when you're scared and anxious of having this thought, that shows us that's an anxiety thing. That is an anxiety that's it's not connected with risk and acting on those. And we know exactly why moms don't talk about it because they're worried about what people are going to think and worried about what that means. And so we don't talk about it, so moms suffer in silence. So the more we can get knowledge out there, the more people can know, the better. And really, the work is very rewarding in the sense of when I have this opportunity to be in a space with a mom, talk with them, explain, hey, we know what this is. This is a symptom. This isn't you. You're a good mom. And I've said things like, I'm not worried that you're going to hurt your baby.
My next question was going to be, how can loved ones in the postpartum mom's life support them? What can they do as someone who went through it and as an educator? What would you tell the support people?
I think one thing is about being able to be a supportive, safe place that's without judgment, and to be able to hear and let moms talk about what they're experiencing and to reassure them that you are a good mom. This is a symptom. This too shall pass. This idea that this is temporary and this is treatable. Being able to be supportive, reassure, help them know they have a safe place to talk, help them, just take care of themselves in general, like prioritizing sleep. And I know it's hard when we think about postpartum, like sleep is not always the thing that comes easier, but can we make a plan to maximize sleep for mom? That's going to be very important. And really being able to walk alongside them and help them know that, you're with them, that we're going to get through this.
Anything else you want to get out there about your story, about PMADS?
We go through hard things in life and we don't always know exactly why. I think we want to know why in general. That's a very powerful thing for us. We not always know why. And actually, this was in a perinatal mental health training. I was taught this example that I've shared quite a bit. It's this idea of like let's think about this way. So say you're weaving a tapestry of your life. It's weaving and it's got all these beautiful colors and it's pretty. You're like, wow, this is so nice. And all of a sudden we're like, black and brown and gross. Like we kind of get through this period that's like, oh, what are those colors about? Like, well, I don't like that. Maybe there's some barbed wire in there. And you're like, that's gross. I don't like this. Why isn't it pretty anymore? But with time, you can continue to proceed. All of a sudden, the colors start coming back and it's beautiful again. And up in that moment when when you're standing right up close to that tapestry, it just looks like the gross part. You're like, ooh, what's that about? However, with time, perhaps I can step back and look at it and say like, oh, okay, yep, that's that shading that was really important for the big picture of what
Yeah, the
this
whole
is.
picture, so you
The
could
whole
really
picture.
appreciate it all.
Yep, and I didn't know at the time, but now I can kind of see that. And so and then also just to like wrap up, if anyone is listening to this and their experience, I know I've talked about anxiety a lot today, specifically intrusive thoughts, knowing though that you can experience postpartum anxiety that does not have a lot of intrusive thoughts. Like I've worked with plenty of moms who that isn't a significant symptom for them. Whether it's that, whether it's postpartum depression, those type of things, these takeaways of knowing that one, you're not alone. Okay, we know that this happens and we know that it happens quite frequently. That 1 in 5 women are going to be diagnosed with a postpartum depression or anxiety disorder. 1 in 5. Okay, and I think that's probably even pre-COVID rates. It'll be very interesting with more data comes back, post-COVID. And that's not talking the amount of women who maybe are struggling but haven't checked enough boxes to be officially diagnosed. So really, this happens a lot. So you are not alone. Postpartum depression is the most underdiagnosed obstetrical complication. Okay. And so and to really think about it this way, that if you're experiencing postpartum depression or anxiety, it's not that you didn't prepare enough. It's not that you aren't suited to be a mom. It's not that you don't have the ability to do this. We know that it happens and it does not discriminate against, race, class, place, an area that you live. It's an obstetrical complication, just like if I would get high blood pressure or preeclampsia or that type of thing. And when we can frame it that way, we can take some of that shame that can come from this, so that this happens. And then with help, you can feel better. Yep. I mean, these are symptoms. They are temporary and they're treatable. And I tell people the most common thing that I hear from moms is this experience too of I just don't feel like myself. And sometimes we can't even pinpoint exactly what that means. But I that resonates so much with me because I remember being I just don't feel like me. I don't even know what this is, but I don't feel like myself. But letting people know you will feel like yourself again. There is hope. You are not changed in this person that will never feel like you again. And it feels like that in the moment, or it can. And postpartum stuff is really hard because it kicks in when you have a baby. So it's very easy to be oh, I guess this is how motherhood feels. Terrible.
Yeah, which is awful. Nobody would
I,
sign up for that
right.
then.
I guess this sucks. When in reality, these are symptoms. This is a complication that you're experiencing. And there's help out there for you. You're not alone. This is treatable.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Thanks, Brooke. I really enjoyed being here.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I know that the topics that we talk about on this podcast can be heavy and bring up a lot of emotions for people, and that's no reason to shy away from these conversations. If you're a fan of trying to get these conversations out to as many people as possible, I could use your help. Rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the podcast helps it reach more people. I always love to hear your feedback on the episodes that we put out and the topics that you want to hear more about. So head to www.redbirdcounseling.mn.com. From there, you can send me an email and join our online email community to get more updates about the podcast and everything happening mental health and Redbird Counseling. Be sure to also follow us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Redbird Counseling MN and Facebook Redbird Counseling MN21. Until next time, remember, you're not alone, your story matters, be kind to yourself, and don't be afraid to color outside the lines.